Kia ora everyone, I'm Court from Caffeine and welcome to Grounds Up. This is our brand new podcast where I get to speak to the amazing people building New Zealand's most ambitious companies and the people supporting them behind the scenes. And I'm super excited about our first episode today because we're not talking about just one company. We're going to be talking about a whole subsector or ecosystem, and that's Climatetech, one that has a lot of potential for New Zealand's future. So I'd love to welcome my guests. I've got Ralph Chang, who's a partner at Motion Capital, and Holly Beals, who's the lead at Aurora Climate Lab out of Creative HQ in Wellington. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining me today for the first episode.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. So I think before I get into too much about you two, what I'd like to ask you about is what the definition of climate tech is, because I think that's something that's probably changed over the last 10 years. And I think a lot of people have a view of it that it's about sustainability principally, which it is, but I think it's larger than that. So maybe if I could throw to Ralph first, what's climate tech from your perspective as an investor?
So climate tech for us it's a very broad term, and there's a lot of subsectors within that term. And what we focus on at Motion Capital is mainly three areas. It's energy, so how things are powered, industrials, so the supply chains, critical minerals, industrial process decarbonisation, but also food, so sustainable food systems. So it's actually really broad, and then there's subsectors within those categories as well. So, you go anywhere between like electrification, smart cities. It's very broad.
So would you say that the purpose layer is kind of the unifying factor behind all those different subsectors?
Yeah, I think so. Well, how we view it is we are looking at businesses that also decarbonise. So for us, decarbonisation is the unifying, impact. How you get to that decarbonisation is dependent on the industry and depending on the company. But yes.
That makes sense. And Holly, how about you? How do you define climate tech?
Yeah, really similarly to Motion Capital. Very broad. I think we think about it as building the infrastructure for tomorrow's economy. So it's not one market or subsector or a product type within a sector. It spans across the economy, and it has there's different groupings, but yes, how we make things, how we power and fuel what we do, how we get around and how we live smart and efficiently, how we have sustainable food production systems in tomorrow's economy as well. So yeah, similar definitions. It includes software all the way through to hardware and deep tech process engineered solutions. So the type of technology is really broad, and the markets that it serves are enormously varied as well.
We focus a lot on this decarbonisation angle of climate tech, but obviously if you're going to invest in it, it has to have some return. So it can't just have this good for the world angle. We've talked quite a lot as a nation about having a technology sector that's good for people, good for business, and good for the planet. Is that the kind of climate tech that you look to invest in, Ralph?
Yeah, 100%. So Motion Capital, our investment thesis is to invest in technology companies that make it cheaper to save the world than to destroy it. So what that really means is we are very commercial. So we really lean into the economics, the commercial models. We think superior economics drives adoption at scale. And when the products scale, that's how you get that, decarbonisation. I don't see a trade-off between financial yield and impact. We actually think it comes through, like the yield comes through the impact. So yeah, there's no trade-off for us. Yeah.
And when you're selecting companies to come into the cohort for the Climate Lab, do you have the same considerations in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. For these teams to have a sustainable business, we're seeing adoption is driven by unit economics that makes sense, and increasingly the economics for solutions like these are improving. So yeah, we need to see founders who are ambitious, and we need to see tech solutions who that can scale here and offshore. It's a necessity mostly for climate technology companies to be serving markets offshore of that scale in order to be viable. So being able to commercialise in New Zealand is excellent. Being able to expand offshore is what's going to make them a sustainable business, usually.
I've spoken to quite a few climate tech founders, and they usually start from a place, they're considering the commercial impacts, but they start from a place of passion, from seeing an issue in the world that they think is not correct, that needs to be fixed, and that they want to improve upon, and that their unique skills can bring some light to. What got you both into climate tech? Did you have a similar kind of passion and interest in the sector? Holly?
Yeah, I did. My background's in industrial design, and I've run my own practice before being a part of other innovative or impact-focused organisations in New Zealand. But I've always really been searching for the role of design in solving some of the world's most complex challenges, and I love the systems challenges of bringing disruptive technologies to the world, or solving both a planet problem and a customer problem, and often those two pain points are very different. So those challenges excite me. Working with founders who are driven by purpose, a purpose like that also excites me. My previous role was at Good Nature, which is a conservation technology company here in New Zealand, and the ecology market was where they existed, and that was a very complex and slow and quite conservative industry, and I think that's sort of representative of the challenges that we see in other markets that are needing to move to adopt climate technologies. So yeah, I was looking to sort of deepen my impact by working with founder-led climate tech companies, and deep tech is a place that I enjoy existing in my brain as well. So
yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. It's like magic to me.
Yeah.
I guess that's things you can't understand.
Yeah.
Just feel like magic. That's what it feels like to me. Ralph, how about you? I know you have a banking background. So did you have an interest in the climate or climate technology before this?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey for me. First decade of my career was in banking, so I did all the debt, the corporate finance, leverage, so lent money to quite large businesses. But then I had like a quarter life crisis, and I decided I wanted to get into startups and be on the operator side. So I've had the last decade of my career, I've had the full gambit of roles. I was first employee, as part of the founding team as a founder. I was a CEO of the last company I was at. That last company, we were doing some interesting things where we were connecting large bond programs, basically large loans, and connecting them into grid scale solar, or looking at hydrogen trucks and all that stuff. So the technology we were using was acting like anti-greenwashing, but with technology essentially, proving where the money kind of goes. So that's probably where I started getting interested in energy and the climate and all the kind of benefits. Pretty amazing technologies, and I think that got me excited. How I kind of started caring a lot more about climate was when I had family, when I had kids. Think about what's going to go on with them, the way we've been going about our lives. So I think that's probably where my interest, and I guess financial markets, it crosses over quite nicely into energy markets. So I do love a VLOOKUP in a spreadsheet most of the time. So yeah.
I think the tamariki thing is relevant. We've just been talking before we started shooting about how we all have kids of a similar age, and definitely your mindset shifts when that happens and you start thinking about what world they might grow up in. Is that something you've seen in the founders coming through the cohort this year as well? Yeah,
absolutely. Lots of them are parents, and I see them coming from really different backgrounds. Some of them have had very corporate careers and have made a shift into something more purpose-led for them. A number of them are academics or researchers in institutes like universities who are spinning technology out, and that's a really different journey. They're not the sort of people who woke up as an entrepreneur one day. They're coming from having discovered something scientific that they see value in for the world, and now they are on a journey to understand what entrepreneurship looks like, which can be frightening. And we're sort of walking with them on this stage of their journey to support them to understand all the other elements that can help enable that into the world.
That's a nice segue into my next question, which was to ask, what's the connection here? Can you explain Motion Capital and Aurora Climate Lab and how you work together to support founders?
Yeah, absolutely. Should I start?
Yeah.
So Motion Capital and Creative HQ have been in partnership for 4 years.
Yes.
I think,
It's
maybe
been a
5.
minute,
Yeah. This is our 5th cohort of our Climatetech accelerator, which has had a few names. The Climate Response Accelerator, it was firstly, and Aurora Climate Lab, we've been rolling with as a brand for 2 years since we've been in more of a formal partnership with Motion Capital. And the relationship is really mutually beneficial for growing the climate tech sector in New Zealand more broadly as well. So our interests are, at Creative HQ are in growing a number of startups and growing the ecosystem that sits around them and supports them to have a sustainable journey, all in the interest of growing New Zealand's economy. And Motion Capital, certainly their thesis resonates with that value proposition as well. And so we look at supporting and growing an ecosystem around a team by building connections with strategic partners, advisors, mentors, and investors. We look at growing their capability with a curriculum of workshops that support knowledge gaps they might have. We look at growing their access to capital, which of course is where Motion Capital come in firstly, but through Motion Capital there's access to the wider investor community in New Zealand, and connecting them with culture is the other 4th C that we use, but this speaks to helping them grow entrepreneurial culture in their team, but also when we think about ecosystems, we build a pipeline that has diverse founders as well. And so we're really focused on making sure diverse founders and diverse solutions are coming out the other end. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, sorry, that was a lot. Coming back to Motion Capital, I think the early access that Motion Capital have to our teams and vice versa gives them a stable footing, really good sort of headroom to focus on their business while they're in our 3-month program. And a lot of learning too. I think Motion Capital are really generous with their knowledge of the sector too. Our interests are in growing the climate sector, and one team's success begets another. And we really bring that spirit into the relationship. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Ralph, from your perspective?
Yeah, that's very kind words, Holly. I think climate tech as an industry in New Zealand, it's growing. So how we view it is, with venture capital, normally you get on, I guess, the capital or the capital highway, if you will, at certain points. But what we found was, those the traditional kind of on-ramps in terms of where founders and companies get on, on that journey. It only suits, you've got to be at a certain stage or a certain size. So I think we thought it was really important to start supporting founders and companies earlier. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know, and that's why we send a lot of the earlier founders that we come across to Creative HQ, because this is what this is what you guys do. You do it really well. Be able to kind of nurture them, and then we also go, hey, we also give them tips around, hey, if you think about this, or if you become this, or if you can create that, then that would get more interesting, or in terms of that investment that investment journey. Venture capital is very specific in terms of what kind of companies that you invest in, just by the nature of the funds and what we are. But it's really important. I think the key thing that we don't want happening was any companies falling through the cracks. So, we spin up a separate fund and we put a little bit of money into the company. So, they can buy the flights, they can go to the conference, they can, go to lawyers and figure out structuring stuff. Just the little things, I think, just help them become a business in which people can invest in. Yep.
Great. What's your perspective on the state of climate tech in New Zealand in terms of like the health of the ecosystem and also, I guess, its trajectory?
I'm happy to take that one to start. It's really fast growing. It's a huge opportunity for New Zealand. We see a lot of investor interest in the investor community that we have in New Zealand. What I guess is an opportunity is that our innovators innovate really fast on very little money, relatively speaking to the rest of the world. It's that on the smell of an oily, as we always say in New Zealand. And we are really tightly connected too. So the proximity advantage we have, the 2 degrees of separation, is a huge part of that. So those are working in our favour to prove out technologies quite quickly and quite cheaply. Where we get a bit stuck is this driving adoption, having companies who are willing and ambitious and willing to share risk with a startup to take that from pilot, turn that into a pilot project, or take it through to demonstration and commercialization. That's a real sticking point here, and often we start to see teams going offshore to establish those joint ventures or those relationships, which sometimes is necessary because of the type of customer that that technology is designed for. But sometimes it's a lost opportunity that we could have retained in New Zealand. So, that's my view on the sector right now. You, Ralph?
Yeah, I think it's growing. I think I saw in a report for 2024, it was the fastest growing in terms of technology investments. Faster than software as a class. We'll wait and see what it's like in 2025, but it was back then. So we're really, and you can see it because of, I guess, the Climate Lab accelerator, the amount of applications we get, they're growing every year, and the quality of the applicants and the cohorts are increasing. They're getting much stronger, more sophisticated. So that is a barometer for climate tech in New Zealand, I think, is really encouraging. I think New Zealand is strong, particularly in those sectors that I'd mentioned. The food, we've got institutional food production knowledge here, so we're really good at growing things and and providing innovations within the sustainable food systems. The industrials, because we've always been by ourselves at the bottom of the world, we're really good at the waste to value. We're really good at having limited resources and turning a waste product into something really valuable and then exporting. And then the energy, I think we have a natural edge in energy in the sense that our generation is 88% renewable. So what we're seeing is the innovators are concentrating on the distribution, so the wires, poles, and the lines. How do you get energy efficiently to the houses and businesses? So we're a few years ahead of many countries in the world. The fact that we've made that investment into generation already, we're still got to do it, but the sandbox we're playing in is quite interesting because we're a few years ahead. We're seeing a lot of AI, hardware, software innovations come through and optimize the grid. So yeah, I think it's really healthy at the moment.
For those who are listening who don't know much about climate tech, are there any companies that you could speak to that could give us like an idea of different types of companies working in New Zealand or exited or?
There's many exciting companies. We've got one called one called Zethos. So Zethos, what they do is they take zinc. Zinc is a key ingredient to galvanize steel, and what they do is take kind of zinc dust, put it through their special process, and then they sell it back to the steel mills for half the cost and 95% less, emissions. And they've got, partnerships with very large steel mills in the US. That company really fits our investment thesis, making it cheaper to save the world and then to destroy it. Even if you didn't look at the emission savings, it's just good business, half the cost of a key ingredient, in your product. They are one to watch, and really there's actually a really talented engineering school, University of Canterbury. They seem to be just pumping out amazing founders. So that's quite an interesting one. In terms of exits, we recently had Factor. They were a B2B retail pricing tool for energy, so for retailers. They recently exited a couple amazing founders, Simon and Jess, and so they were recently bought by Gentrack. So Motion Capital, we were in early with that company, and that's a real example of leaning into a problem that you really understand. The founders understood the problem. They were able to get lots of traction really fast, and obviously got sold. So that's really encouraging, for our companies, and I think we need more of that. If we get more exits from more founders, we recycle, that capital, but also, you get founders that have gone and done it, and that fuels an amazing ecosystem, that recycling of talent and experience.
Awesome. So that both of your jobs essentially is to help these early stage founders fill the gaps in their knowledge. What are those gaps that you perceive from working with them closely?
It can be different for different types of founders. So usually, though, as a general rule, they're coming to us as an expert in the technology or the science itself. So usually they've got that covered. We're not teaching them about the technology or the science, but it's usually everything else. So bringing the IP strategy around that technology, making sure that there's a strong market opportunity that is matched to that, and helping them understand the economics and the business model integration to help bring that into the world in partnership as well with a customer. Yeah.
I know the cohort this year is kind of all at varying stages. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, great. As a cohort, they learn from each other a huge amount, and we pride ourselves in building a program that forms really close cohort connection. We try to establish their relationships with each other in a strong way up front. So we run in-person events to kind of make sure that trust is built early. And so that learning from each other is a massive part of it. But we also have advisors and mentors and coaches that we put around them as well. I've forgotten the question originally.
I think you were answering it, so
okay.
That's fine.
It's serving a diverse cohort, isn't it?
Yeah.
At different stages.
Yeah.
With regard to their different stages, we find that the iterating is really circular. So thinking about the technology, the market opportunity, the customer problem, and how we match a business model that brings that technology to the customer, sort of understanding and getting the discovery to understand that well enough is very circular and kind of constant. The customer discovery never ends. So they share that learning. We drive our later stage companies to still be doing customer discovery and gaining insights, but usually what they're getting their insights on is more sort of commercial aspects of the customer's business that they see as an opportunity to partner, as opposed to how do you experience the pain. Or sorry, I've got quite technical here, but it's really an iterative journey, and so they share a lot of the learning, regardless of their stage. They learn from each other as well.
I was talking to one of them yesterday. I think it was Ash and Graham from Dataloom, and they're both ex-Google, have never run their own startup before, and they were talking about their customer discovery process, but they didn't call it customer discovery because they kept saying to me, we didn't know all the startup lingo. So they got to the cohort and realized, oh, we've been doing the right thing, like we've been doing that research. But for them, a lot of the value was in understanding how startups work and how all of that works, and even just being inside that environment where that language becomes normal.
Awesome.
I don't. This is not a question. This was just a general
statement
that I found interesting from chatting to them.
Our teams learn a huge amount from Ash and Graham and their experience at Google.
Yeah.
Google's a really interesting player here in the New Zealand market too, who will start to solve some of the problems if we don't have startups solving those problems. So there's a lot of interesting sort of tech support tech insights that Graham brings that the other founders in the cohort benefit from.
There's no such thing as wasted experience when you're in startups, is there? So a lot of these, when I speak to the founders, there's a lot of these have quite a long timeline on the work that they're doing, especially in deep tech when they're doing pilots and that kind of thing. How do both of you kind of look to that as you're planning what you invest in? Tell me more about this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think with deep tech companies, inherently, a lot of the time it takes a bit more money and it takes a bit more time to get that milestone. And so it's all about capital planning. So the key thing is to be able to forecast and look at those key kind of milestones, ensure that they have enough money to actually get to them. But it's a challenge. I think as part of our jobs as a VC fund is to make sure that they're connected on that capital supply chain, if you will, ensuring that they've got a supportive group of investors that can also, help them along their journey and grow with them as they grow. And the key thing that, I think one of the challenges, and another challenge in the New Zealand market is really around the size of our capital markets. So it's important to actually introduce them early into overseas capital and overseas investors. So, yes.
And I guess my final question would be then, what does New Zealand have to do to kind of support this ecosystem to grow, do you think? As a nation, what are the gaps that we need to fill? What are the unique challenges that New Zealand's climate tech startups face?
I could start if you want with that one. I think I spoke earlier to this challenge of driving adoption at a pilot stage and having commercial partners who are ambitious enough to share that risk. That's something that New Zealand can be a bit more strategic about in incentivising. And there are markets and niches where we're well positioned to be leaderful in the world with our technology and our solutions. And where we're at the bottom of the world and end of supply chains, we have a real need to be secure and resilient into the future as well. And so, I think we can't wait for government to, pour the capital in and be the leader in all areas. But I think a lot more coordination in the sector is starting to happen to help show New Zealand, from a New Zealand Inc. perspective, what that opportunity is and where we can be a lot more strategic and put our investments in the right spot.
Right. Anything you want to add to that, Ralph?
Yeah, I think it's important to have capital available at all stages of the life cycle. There's particularly a gap in the deep tech scale-ups where broadly they have retired, the technical risk in the product and they've got a demo plant. The successful and the companies with momentum, they'll have offtake agreements or large offtake agreements with international or local kind of customers. So normally they need to graduate from a pilot plant into the first of a kind. It's called first of a kind, I guess, funding. So that first full-scale commercial plant. That's really hard to fund. They take millions of dollars, and banks won't lend to them because, it's the first of a kind. They'll probably do the second or the third one, but that first one is really difficult for them to get their head around. So normally equity has to go and fund that kind of piece. But you imagine if you need to build a $50 million, first commercial plant, what kind of valuation you need to be able to absorb that with equity. So there's always tension behind that. So I think there is a gap where, there's a development, just like property development. You can stage it where you've got offtake in terms of supply and customer contracts, and the key risk is obviously getting that first plant built. It's if the technical risk is being retired, then it's a scale up project finance or project risk. So someone has to get comfortable with that, because when the ribbon's cut, when the Prime Minister cuts the ribbon, and it's got massive offtake and it's got contracts and revenue, banks will happily refinance that and fund that. But it's just that thing in the middle. I think that's something we need a coordinated approach on. Yep.
I think that's a good, optimistic, and maybe call to action to end on. Thanks so much for joining me today for the first ever Grounds Up podcast. And it was great to chat to you. And I'm looking forward to seeing where Climatetech goes in the future with your help. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Courtney.